As we've been reporting, the Republican Party picked up a major victory in Virginia's gubernatorial election Tuesday night. CBS News is projecting Glenn Youngkin as the winner and the state's next governor. He defeated Democrat Terry McAuliffe and will become Virginia's first Republican governor since 2009. This race and its results are being looked at as a reflection of how voters are thinking and feeling ahead of next year's midterm elections and which party could gain control of Congress. For more, I want to bring in Leslie Sanchez and Antjuan Seawright. Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and a Republican strategist. Antjuan is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist. And they are both great friends of the show. Good to see you guys. So, Antjuan, I'm going to give it to you first to give your reaction to the results in Virginia.
Well, of course, it was bittersweet for me. Bitter, obviously, because not only did we lose at the top of the ticket, we lost the House of Delegates in Virginia. We all know how critical some of the downstream races are, just as important as perhaps some of the upstream races. We saw a surge in turnout across the state. They crossed the 3 million voter threshold. However, our candidate, Terry McAuliffe, end up getting the same number of votes as Ed Gillespie, who was the last person to run in Virginia. Look, at the end of the day, I think Republicans did a great job of defining what their message is, and we did not do a good enough job of articulating what our strengths are. In other words, our offense was not our defense, and we allowed our defense to having to serve as our offense. And I think when you're the party in charge and the expectation is for you to do well, that's not a good position to be in.
It seems like your offense on the Democratic side was trying to tie Youngkin to former President Trump. Leslie, on that front, did Youngkin prove that Republicans could hold former President Trump at arm's length and win over voters, particularly those independent voters?
Certainly in states like Virginia. Now, if we think about Virginia, it's traditionally been trending very purple. Republicans have been concerned about it for a long time because it's a long history before you look back and see Republican leadership in this state. But definitely something that keeps an eye. If you look at the type of candidate Youngkin is, he's a candidate who matches the state in terms of his background, being an outsider, not too tied to politics, that people, he was a top of mind name ID in a place that has a very large area that's connected to Washington, D.C. They're very familiar with politics in this town, and they're very tired of it, I would argue. So for Virginia, it's exactly the right fit. In other states, I think you're going to see Republicans follow a model of embracing some of the support early on in the primary and distancing in the general. But you might see a little bit of deviation in that in more kind of southwestern states or states that are still very much on the Trump brand.
Antjuan, I want to dig deeper with you into the independents because CBS News exit polling shows that 45% of independent voters went for McAuliffe. This is a group that voted for President Biden by 19 points in the 2020 presidential election. What do you make of this tremendous shift?
Well, I think what happened was sometimes those of us in this business, we compare elections to previous elections. When you think about the 2020 election or even the 2017 gubernatorial election, there's no comparison to the environment and to, I think, the excitement and the anger and frustration in this election. So we started off wrong in that regard. And so when you think about independent voters, this election ended up being, when it comes to independent voters, suburban white voters. The main issue in this election, one was the economy, but I think the driving force issue turned out to be education, which was camouflaged as the critical race theory argument, which we all know really does not exist. And so the GOP did what they always do. They tapped into an issue that would, I think, pump up the volume around the things that are very important to their election strategy: anger, frustration, and confusion. And so with that, you have this idea of critical race theory, and you have these parents who think that if Terry McAuliffe is elected the Democrats, that these schools are going to be taken over and taught with something that really does not exist. And for some reason, that seemed to drive turnout, and that shifted voters who traditionally would have been in the Democratic column. It shifted them to vote Republican, in particular suburban white women.
Leslie, what of that? Education became such an important issue among Youngkin supporters. As Antjuan says, Youngkin said he was going to ban the teaching of critical race theory in Virginia classrooms. It's not currently a part of the public school curriculum. But more importantly than even that arguable boogeyman argument was that Youngkin seemed to embrace parent input in the classroom, and it sounded like McAuliffe was saying, parents, you're not wanted in the classroom. Did Youngkin really hit a nerve, or was this more a case of bungling the issue by Democrats?
I'm glad you said that, because that is Terry McAuliffe's gaffe in terms of saying, no, the parents really don't belong there, insinuating that the teachers, the unions, and just others, administrators, are going to make decisions about what children are taught, fundamentally is a lightning rod that galvanized many independents for the Republican candidates, social conservatives for the Republican candidate. That was really the moment, and the Youngkin campaign took advantage of it. We've seen that, cutting ads quickly, putting it out there. And when you're talking to voters later on in terms of how they were receiving that, it became, as one Republican described it, the mama papa bear. You're not going to get between the mama papa bear and their child, and their cub. And in this case, on education, and certainly on how they teach in the classroom. That is one of those areas that continues, you can go back historically, to be a culture war issue for many individuals, actually, who really don't think of themselves ideologically with one party or the other. You could talk about it on homeschooling. You can talk about it in charter schools. There's so many different areas we can go back through and see that in the same vein, this becomes a wave and a movement that, in this case, the Youngkin campaign certainly took advantage of. I don't think the Democrats will make that mistake again. This is not one you want to wade into gently. Yeah, they're recalibrating, and that is a 101 now in the playbook. So there's going to be a deeper conversation moving forward. This is not something you were just going to repeat in another state, but it is a lesson to candidates that this is such a touching issue for parents, and will continue to be through time, how they educate their children.
Absolutely. So, Antjuan, how do Democrats regroup and bounce back from this loss?
Oh, absolutely. Look, as Democrats, we know how to bend, but we never break. And as we oftentimes say in the South, there's no education in the second kick of the mule. So we will learn from our mistakes on what happened last night. We will obviously take the good, transfer that to future elections. By no way, shape, or form do I believe this is an indicator of what the 2022 midterms could look like, but also I think this is just a warm-up act of what we should be prepared for, whether it's critical race theory as the red meat issue for Republicans, whether it's defunding police. They have no agenda, they have no plan, and so the way they gin up base and excitement to turn out their voters is to be more angry than informed, and I think that is probably the larger picture of last night. I would not even suggest that the Democrats lost. I think Youngkin won, and there's a big difference between Democrats losing and Youngkin winning. He was able to win because he was able to tap into this magic that exists that end up driving out record turnout on their side, and although we had record turnout on our side, it was not enough to make up the difference between the two.
All right, Leslie.
We're out of time. Okay.
Sorry, Leslie. Leslie, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to that. Do you think that this was really a case of Youngkin winning, not Democrats losing? And how do you think others within the Republican Party are going to try and build off of this momentum?
No, I think Terry McAuliffe ran a terrible campaign. I mean, that's an easy kind of observation to make from this chair, the day after the election, but it really was. It was out of touch with what the voters were thinking. He started out, thinking this was going to be just an abortion issue that was going to galvanize women, particularly those suburban women, suburban white women, and it didn't. It shifted another way. He wasn't talking about the economy. He was continued to showcase himself with unions, the education unions, as opposed to the parents who were saying they wanted their voice to be heard. They were tone deaf on so many issues that mattered. And you had Youngkin ending his campaign talking about ending the grocery tax in the state. So economic issues, pocketbook issues, listening to the parents. It was really, strategically, he was outflanked by a better campaign.
All right. Leslie Sanchez, Antjuan Seawright, thank you both.